Little update on visa requirements, or actually on quarantine requirements for Vietnam right now. The visa requirements haven't changed at all so far, and basically for the last year or so. Those allowed to enter Vietnam have been mostly Vietnamese citizens stranded abroad, foreign diplomats, investors, and high-skilled workers, which the last category receives something called an expert visa. Um, so basically, that hasn't changed. No tourist visas are being offered yet. But the one change that has happened is that as of early in August, fully vaccinated people arriving in Vietnam will have to spend 7 days in centralized quarantine and self-monitor their health the following week. The health ministry said Wednesday, I guess a week ago Wednesday, um, or maybe even this week Wednesday. Yeah, probably was this week. Anyway, so I think foreigners may pay for a quarantine hotel package. Vietnamese citizens are probably put in a government quarantine facility. Um, and then the second week, the first week for 7 days would be in a government approved quarantine facility. And then the second week, I guess you could move into a different hotel and do what they would call uh, self-isolation with probably a couple uh, more COVID tests before you're free to go out in the community. So uh, the quarantine period for vaccinated people would be lowered from 14 days to 7 days. And there was a time not so long ago when it actually had been as much as 21 days quarantine for anyone entering the country. So it's getting at least a little bit lower for the fully vaccinated people. Um, Also, anyone infected with COVID-19 who has a certificate to prove they have recovered from it within the past 6 months would also see their centralized quarantine period reduced, I guess, to 7 days. They do require people in their uh, second 7 days of home isolation, if you'd call it, to monitor their own health and constantly use contact tracing app Blue Zone. So let's see. Oh yeah, entrants would pay the quarantine fees themselves, whereas I'm not sure about Vietnamese citizens, but definitely foreigners will have to pay for their hotel. Um, so that's pretty much the rule there at the moment. The country itself remains fairly much locked down. Um, Maybe there's a few provinces that don't have many COVID cases, but it is fairly widespread through the country at the moment. And the bigger cities of Ho Chi Minh, Hanoi, and Da Nang do seem to be under pretty strict lockdown, as is Nha Trang. Um, Here we have been under social distancing order and uh, a little bit stricter order called Directive 16. Uh, the initial lockdown period was July 9th until I believe August 8th, and that's been extended probably until August 20th here. Different parts of the country have slightly different dates on that, depending on when they first went into their Directive 16 or stricter lockdown modes. So what that means is the beach is quite clean but extremely empty. So the beaches are off limits. Walking the beach road is off limits. Pretty much walking anywhere except to go to a store for food shopping, or to a pharmacy or some other emergency. That's pretty much all you can do outside. Restaurants, at least in Nha Trang, are closed, certainly for dining in. A few seem to still be offering delivery or takeout, although that seems to be very few restaurants, and they may actually be taking a chance on getting a fine for that. I don't know for certain, but I do see some ads for a few restaurants, which seem mainly to be foreign owned, that are still offering delivery of restaurant food. I don't think, well, okay, I shouldn't say that. Some stores are no longer doing delivery, but they are open, although now you need a shopping voucher, which is good for once every 4 days. I think people are granted a voucher to go to a store in their ward. And at least for a few days, people were supposedly limited to staying in the ward they lived in. And there were police blocks on the road or police checks on the road. And I did see some people being turned back. I don't drive, so I'm not so familiar with that situation, but supposedly people were required to stay in their ward, and even if they were shopping with coupons, they needed to use a coupon, or they needed to use the coupon in a store in their ward. So it's been a fairly strict lockdown, and and it's been going on just short of a month. And unfortunately, case numbers seem to remain relatively steady. This current outbreak is not as easy as other ones to get under control. And I would have hoped that after 1 month, more or less a month, of mass testing and quarantining of people who have COVID or test positive for it, and of fairly strict lockdown orders. As of the last week or so, we've been having a 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. So basically, people are not out at night. In the daytime, I guess you can see the usually fairly busy Pham Van Dong Road along the beach. There isn't that much traffic on the main roads. A little bit of foot traffic as people walk to the stores. The smaller convenience type stores are still open without needing a voucher to go in. Some will make you sign your name and your phone number. The last time I went into one particular store, they didn't require that, although they had a few days earlier. But yeah, so it is still possible to go out any day of the week to a smaller store and at least stock up on water and whatever they happen to be having in stock, which often in the smaller stores is you're limited to water, other drinks, and instant noodles, maybe a few canned goods or pastas or something like that. But yeah, basically, you're not starving to death, and one shopping trip every 4 days isn't so bad. You can get enough fresh food to last you for a few days. And but basically life right now is waiting waiting to get back into the water, waiting to possibly be able to go back into restaurants to eat. And for the Vietnamese, I'm sure it's waiting to be able to go back to your job. Previously, there would be taxis waiting down here, but the taxis have been pulled off the street, and there used to be banh mi stands and other kinds of food stands or carts right down on the street here and up the block in Hon Chong Street. But they have all disappeared, and the little restaurants that used to set tables up, they've all closed too. So the local people have been out of work for just about a month now. And, not just the independent food or restaurants and vegetable marts, fruit marts, those sellers, they've been pretty much without an income. But also, I think a lot of industries have closed. This building right next door, construction has stopped for at least the last 3 or 4 weeks, and I would imagine that's the case with most of the construction projects, as is probably the case with anything that's not deemed an essential industry at the moment. So life goes on here, but it's mostly annoying for foreigners, at least those who aren't working. And for the Vietnamese, I believe it's more than annoying. It's probably rather painful, especially for the small business owners that probably didn't make a lot of money even before this recent closure, because tourism is way down. But now the banh mi sellers on the street corner that used to sell banh mi for 20,000 dong, which is about 90 cents, probably with a very small profit margin, aren't even able to make that small profit margin. The supermarkets are probably doing quite well because restaurants are closed, so people are doing a lot more eating at home than they had. And luckily, the Moon Milk store in my building, which is the only relatively large store that sells a variety of food in this area, it is still open, and as far as I know, the staff has avoided getting infected with COVID for many customers. And so I do hope that continues to be the case. I believe some of the larger supermarkets have had situations where some of the staff tested positive for COVID, and they probably closed the stores for a while. So anyway, beautiful weather, although getting quite hot here in Nha Trang. It's probably getting up to some days 38 or 39 Celsius, which is upper 90s or even 100 Fahrenheit. So it's warm, although I find the heat in Nha Trang is not too bad because it's quite dry. And except for nighttime when I'm trying to sleep, I never turn on my air conditioning here. I'm right across the street from the beach, so I do get a bit of a sea breeze, and I can have my sliding glass door open on the balcony here. So it isn't terrible, and I have a fan which I use almost continually. But anyway, that's the update. If you happen to be someone who's going to get a job in Vietnam, the good news is if you've gotten yourself vaccinated, now you're only going to have to do 7 days of a quarantine hotel. Yeah, but although the next 7 days will be home isolation or hotel isolation probably. And So it isn't a real major change from being in quarantine.